Welcome, Aiboan. So in this lesson, we are going to have a look at book 12, right? The Cambridge book 12. And we're going to have a look at the 4 speaking tests. Now, even if you're doing general or academic, you can still refer the same speaking test because there's no difference. Alright, so as you know in your speaking test, you have part 1, part 2 and part 3. Part 1. This part of the test begins with the examiner introducing himself or herself and checking the candidate's identification. It then continues as an interview. In the interview, the examiner asks the candidate about him or herself, his or her home, work or studies, and other familiar topics, right? So let's have a look at health. The questions, we're looking at it individually. It is important to you to eat healthy food. I think yes, it is important, especially for me, because I need to make sure I'm fit and healthy. So eating healthy food is important. If you catch a cold, what do you do to help you feel better? So usually if I get a cold, I drink some ginger ale. Okay, so in Sri Lanka we could put a bit of ginger. It's called plain tea, right? And you mix it with tea and you could drink it. If it doesn't get better, then probably I would go to the doctors, but that would be very rare. Do you pay attention to public information about health? Yes, I do. I take it quite seriously because I've got 3 kids and I do pay attention to the public information. What could you do to have a healthier lifestyle? I think I need to go and start working out or doing some kind of exercise. That's something I don't do at the moment, so I feel doing some form of exercise would help me to have a healthier lifestyle, right? Okay, looking at part 2. Now in this part, the topic for your talk will be written on a card, rather printed, okay, which the examiner will hand you. Read it carefully and then make some brief notes. You should make sure that you cover all the bullet points. You will have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes. And you have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes to help you if you wish, right? So once your preparation time is up, the examiner would tell you, all right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? So remember, try to speak close to 2 minutes and try to finish all these bullet points during that time. Describe an occasion when you had to wait for a long time for someone or something to arrive. You should say who or what you were waiting for, how long you had to wait, why you had to wait, and explain how you felt about the waiting time. Okay? So I'm going to make some notes. Alright, so I'd like to describe about an occasion where I had to wait for someone for a long time. So I had to wait for my husband at home because we had to go for a wedding and my husband had some work to do in the morning, so the wedding was in the evening, so he had to do some work. So he said he'll go get it done, and he had to go out of Colombo to Gaul to get his work done. So that was fine because we had to go for the wedding at 5 o'clock in the evening and I was supposed to sign as a witness. So I was ready around by say 3:30, okay, and I was waiting for him at home. So I was giving him telephone calls because he'd not turn up by 3:45 as well, and I knew I was running out of time. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. He didn't pick up his phone. So finally, around 7:30, he answered the call. And to find out, he had met with a car accident and everything to sort out and to get the insurance to come and the other person's insurance guy to come in. It had taken so long that he had not realized that the time had passed by and he had forgotten about the wedding. I felt really angry because I was late to go for the wedding. In the end, I ended up going alone because he wasn't there. And I was late. I couldn't sign as the witness and I had to ask one of my other friends to sign on behalf of me because, they couldn't wait. It was obviously an auspicious time. I was angry, furious, and also hurt. Okay? So you can explain about this the way you want. You don't have to explain about someone. You could explain about something that arrived late. So moving on, part 3, discussion topics would be arriving early and then being patient. So let's have a look at the questions arriving early. In what kinds of situations should people always arrive early? I think for interviews, when you go to school or for something important, you should always go early. How important is it to arrive early in your country? I think Sri Lankans are quite popular for being trendy late. So we're not a nation considered to be quite prompt on time or going early. We're usually late. They say, oh, we were busy. Sorry, we're late for the interview. And if that was the case, I would never want to work there because if they can't work on time for an interview, I don't see how they could function in the long run. Okay? How can modern technology help people to arrive early? I mean, if you use GPS, then if there's traffic, it would notify you. And you don't have to go and say, oh, I couldn't find the place, You could always put the location and go to the place exactly. So if you leave early, you could get there. And technology will help you get there by avoiding the traffic routes and telling you where exactly to go. Let's talk about being patient. What kinds of jobs require most patience? I think all jobs require most patience, but teaching, doctors, nurses, carers require a lot of patience when they're dealing with different types of people. Is it always better to be patient in work or studies? I think wherever you are, even in work or even if you're studying, being patient is important because your actions reflect as to who you are. Do you agree or disagree that the older people are, the more patient they are? Not really. I can't agree completely. I would partially agree. There are some people as they grow older, they become more patient, but some people as they grow older become quite cranky and they get angry really quickly. So I would partially agree with that. Moving on into test 2, again you have part 1, part 2 and part 3. So let's have a look at part 1 topic, songs and singing. Did you enjoy singing when you were younger? Yes, I did. I used to always sing in the bathroom and I still do actually. How often do you sing now? I still do sing on a daily basis. When I go to have a wash, I enjoy myself by singing or rather humming to myself. Do you have a favorite song you like listening to? Yes. I really love this song saying One Day at a Time, Sweet Jesus, okay, because it has a lot of meaning to it and I love listening to that song. How important is singing in your culture? In terms of culture, I don't think it plays a quite important part. But in terms of society, yes, people love to sing and enjoy themselves. Right, so we're going to have a look at part 2. Now, as you remember, part 2, you will get a specific card. And you will have to talk about this topic for 1 to 2 minutes. For 1 to 2 minutes. You will have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. When your preparation time is over, the examiner would tell you, all right, remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? Okay? So let's have a look at your topic. Describe a film or movie actor or actress from your country who is very popular, who this actor or actress is, what kinds of films or movies he or she acts, what you know about this actor or actress's life, and explain why this actor or actress was so popular. Okay, because it's from my country, I will select. Right, so I'd like to talk about Roshan Ranavana. I'm extremely sorry I don't know much about him, but I'm just going to tell about him at least because I need to say something for the speaking test, okay? Right, so the actor that I love the most is Roshan Ranavana, and he actually acts in films, teledramas, and movies. I haven't seen him acting in short stories, but I have kind of seen him acting in teledramas and other movies. And they're quite popular, and they've had a lot of people viewing that because his acting is really good. What I know about his life is I know that he's married and he's got 1 kid, and I kind of like his whole family lifestyle, how he talks, how he comes on social media. He's not a social media addict where he keeps on posting things where he eats and he goes out for everything. He doesn't do that, but he does put up some posts on and off, which is quite nice. And the most, the nicest thing I like about him is he's a very homely guy. He thinks his family is first before anything, and he gives that the most priority in his life. So I really adore this actor. And why he's so popular is because I think people love him for who he is. He doesn't try to be someone else. He doesn't show off. He's quite a down-to-earth person, and he has acted in quite famous popular movies, and his acting is quite natural as well. So I think that's the reason why he's so popular. Okay, so moving into part 3, we're going to talk about watching films and movies, right? And also about theatre. So let's have a look at these questions. Watching films and movies. What are the most popular types of films in your country? I think love, things which are evolved around love and, action are the most popular movies. What is the difference between watching a film in the theatre and watching a film at home? I think when you watch a film in the theatre, right, or the cinema rather, it gives you that feeling and, there's a big screen in front of you and you're kind of into it and you popcorn and that feel is there. Whereas when you're at home, you watch a film, it's through the small screen and it might not be that entertaining. Do you think cinemas will close in the future? I don't think so, because I think people will always have that liking to go out and get that experience. Especially now because the cinemas have 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D and so on. People would definitely go. Talking about theatre, how important is the theatre in your country's history? I think a lot. There used to be a lot of theatre dramas before, and it actually brings out a lot of cultural aspects as well. So I think it's quite important. How strong a tradition is it today in your country to go to the theatre? I think it's not at all strong. People very rarely go to the theatre, right, to watch theatre dramas because they tend to grow out of it and they love to watch the ones that come into the cinema more. Do you think the theatre should be run as a business or as a public service? I think it should be a business. There should be a value for these actors and actresses who have a great level of commitment and skill, and I think they should make money out of it, so it definitely should be a business. Right, so we're now moving into part 3. Okay, so here as well you have part 1, part 2 and part 3. So just as every test, part 1 you will have 3 topics being discussed, and it will be about familiar topics and obviously about home, work, studies, etc. And under each topic they would ask you 4 questions. So in total you would have 12 questions and you would have to speak roughly for about 4 to 5 minutes. But remember, part 1, 2 and 3, the entire time is controlled by the examiner, so you don't need to worry about the time. Let's have a look at the topic clothes. Where do you buy most of your clothes? I buy most of my clothes from this store called R&T. How often do you buy new clothes for yourself? It depends. I mean, when it was like COVID, I hardly went to a clothes store or ordered anything online. But I would say once a month, once in 2 months, I would go to a clothes store and buy some new clothes for myself. How do you decide which clothes to buy? That's quite weird how I buy clothes. I just walk through and I think, oh, this is good. I just choose and I kind of fit it on and see, okay, it looks good, and I would buy it. I don't have a specific criteria to select the clothes that I wear. Anything that looks decent, not too bright, I would select those kind of clothes. Have the kinds of clothes you like changed in recent years? Not really. I think I've always, kind of been the same old style person. I haven't changed. I always used to wear trousers and a top. I think that was there in the past. It still continues. Right. So in part 2, you're going to get a card, obviously, and you will have to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. You will get 1 minute to prepare yourself, and you can make some notes if you wish, right? So, describe an interesting discussion you had about how you spent your money. Who you had the discussion with, why you discussed this topic, what the result of the discussion was, and explain why this discussion was interesting. So, I like to describe an interesting discussion. Rather than interesting, it was a bit useful as well, about how I spent my money. So I had this discussion with my dad, and why I discussed about how I spent my money was because I could never save up. Even though I earned a certain amount of money, I was struggling to save, and the best person I thought who I could turn to was my dad. So I went and discussed with him as to how I could save money. So we had a discussion about what my income was, what my fixed costs were, and what my varying costs were. We also had a look at how I could control my spending, and we had a look at a budget. We had a look at a list of things that we could work on, areas where we could cut down on the cost. So as a result of the discussion, I had to observe my income and expenditure for 3 months, and at the end of 3 months I did see there was a drastic drop in my expenditure. So I'd actually been spending a lot on unnecessary stuff. So that had reduced. And why I found this discussion interesting was I was able to pick up on a lot of things that I didn't know before. I knew that my father was a person who could control his budget really well. So I found it interesting as to what mechanism and tools he was using to control the expenditure. So I found that quite interesting. Now you can talk about this as you want with any topic that you feel you're comfortable with. So moving on into part 3, we're going to talk more about money and young people as well as money and society. Okay? So let's have a look at the topics individually. Money and young people. Why do some parents give their children money to spend each week? The reason is, when your kids go out, they need money. So if they're studying in college, they need to spend for their traveling, maybe for their food. So giving them a weekly budget makes sure that the kids know, okay, this is all I've got to spend for my week. So they would mostly give them a weekly budget. Do you agree that schools should teach children how to manage money? I definitely agree with this. The school should be able to provide students with some kind of guidance as to how to spend their money and how they could reduce on cutting down unnecessary costs. Do you think it is a good idea for students to earn money while studying? I think so. I think it's a good idea. The reason is why, because then they have a good understanding as to how hard it is to earn money and they take ownership for their earning and their expenditure. So rather than parents giving them money, which they find is quite, I'm getting it like free of charge, so I could do whatever I want with it. If they learn to earn and then spend, they would then understand the difficulty. So I totally agree with this. Outside the context of this, abroad, students work and they spend for their own thing, which I think is quite good, okay? But in a Sri Lankan context, I think even for myself, my parents used to spoon feed. They give you everything and you start earning actually after you finish university, which then is obviously you've not had any work experience, even developing certain skills like working in a team. So could be good to start at an early age. Talking about money and society, do you think it is true that in today's society, money cannot buy happiness? I think so. I partially agree to the fact that money cannot buy happiness. Money can buy you good things and everything that you want to have in your life. It could buy the tangible things. But the stuff that you can't touch, like, your own satisfaction, how happy you are when you do something for others, that money cannot buy. So I agree that not everything can be bought by money. What disadvantages are there in a society where the gap between rich and poor is very large? So I think when the disparity is more in terms of your income, there's a lot of rich people and there's very poor people, you start getting hatred in society. People start seeing them saying, oh, why don't we have it? So it leads to a society where there's full of crime, and that is the main disadvantage. Apart from that, you could also see people being very jealous and their internal values that they have start changing. So that is another problem. Right, so we are into our last test, which is test 4. All right, again, we have part 1, part 2, and part 3. So we're going to have a look at art, okay? Did you enjoy doing art lessons when you were a child? Yes, I did. We had art lessons in school, and I also used to go for an art class. I enjoyed it because that was a time for me to relax, actually. Do you ever draw or paint pictures now? Never. I never do it now because I think I don't have the time and I don't have the desires I used to have. When was the last time you went to an art gallery or an exhibition? Oh, I would say probably about 10 years ago. That was the last time I went because I haven't had the chance, and nor do we have good exhibitions or things to see in Sri Lanka, so I haven't had the chance to actually do it. What kind of pictures do you like having in your home? I like having sceneries in my home, like beautiful pictures of places, trees and flowers and things like that, because it's soothing for my eye, and when you're stressed out, when you look at the picture, you feel a bit calm and relaxed. Alright, so we're into part 2, and now you know we've done a few books, so test 4 is for you to do it on your own, okay? Describe a time when you visited a friend or family member at their workplace. So not at their home, but where they work, okay? Whom you visited, where this person worked, why you visited this person's workplace, explain how you felt about visiting this person's workplace. So as you know, you will have to talk about this topic for 1 to 2 minutes. You get 1 minute to prepare, and you may make some notes if you wish, okay? So that's up to you to do it on your own, okay? Because all the test 4, I let you do it on your own because you need to be able to approach them on your own. So coming into part 3, I won't tell you answers, but I'll guide you as to areas that you can think about. We'll be talking about different kinds of workplaces and the importance of work, right? What things make an office comfortable to work in? So you could talk about the relationships between people and obviously the working environment, the chairs and the comfortable environment, having a bit of green plants in. You could talk about those. Why do some people prefer to work outdoors? Maybe it's their preference, maybe their job role involves them to work outside. Do you agree that the building people work in is more important than the colleagues they work with? So it depends on what people would be motivated upon, right? Some people, they want the extravagant look and all of that. Some people, they want their colleagues and the personal relationships to be with them. So you could argue about either of these. Talking about the importance of work, right? What would life be like if people didn't have to work? So you could say it would be wonderful. You can just sit and wait, okay? And then you can say it could be quite boring because people don't utilize the skills that they've learned. Are all jobs of equal importance? My perception, yes. You could disagree with that and say no. Why do some people become workaholics? Because either they are trained to do so or they're really passionate about their jobs. And the last reason would be for survival. Some jobs are very competitive, so unless you work, you'll not be able to retain your job. Right, so I think with that we've come to the end, right? So we were looking at workplaces, we were looking at part 2 discussions about when you visited a person at their workplace. We were looking at art, okay? We were looking at society and money and being rich if you had money, okay? We're also looking at clothes, theater, drama, movies, favorite actor or actress, right? Songs and singing. And next we were looking at being patient, arriving on time, okay, about health, and we've had a look at 4 tests, okay, complete 4 tests for part 1, part 2 and part 3. So with that we've come to the end of looking at all 4 tests for Cambridge Book 12.